In early civilizations, intellectual activity and systems of belief were deeply shaped by geography and environmental conditions. As we have already seen, Mesopotamia and Egypt were similar in some respects and very different in others. The same is true of their worldviews. Before focusing on what set them apart, it is useful to begin with the ideas they shared in common. The most important shared ideas were those used to explain how the world worked and why events happened as they did. Unlike modern scientific explanations, ancient peoples understood the world primarily through religion. What anthropologists refer to as animism formed the foundation of many early belief systems. Animism is the belief that the world is filled with gods and spirits that control natural forces and events. There were major gods associated with powerful phenomena such as the sun, the moon, and rain, as well as lesser spirits believed to live in rocks, trees, rivers, and animals. These divine beings were thought to govern everything in nature. If the sun rose, it did so because the sun god willed it. If rain fell, it was because a rain god had chosen to nourish the land. Just as importantly, these gods were believed to control human life and political affairs. Mesopotamians, for example, might believe that if a man stubbed his toe, it was because the spirit of the rock had intended to trip him. If two cities went to war, it was understood not simply as a human conflict, but as a struggle between the gods of those cities. Victory went to the city whose god was more powerful. To ancient peoples, explaining an event meant explaining why the gods made it happen. For this purpose, societies developed myths, and in many ways, we still rely on them today. A myth is a story about gods, humans, or both, that communicates an essential truth about the world, the gods, or the proper way to live. Mythology is how societies explain reality and understand their place within it. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a myth as a fictional narrative, often involving supernatural beings, that conveys ideas about natural or historical phenomena. You may have been taught that myths are merely primitive stories or religious fictions. However, myths are far more serious and meaningful than such definitions suggest. First, a myth is fundamentally a story about the relationship between humans and the divine, or about life, the universe, and existence itself. Second, although the details of a myth may be half true or entirely fictional, the message it conveys is considered absolutely true. The central figure may or may not have existed, but the lesson the story teaches is what mattered, and that truth gave the myth its power. Because of this, myths in Egypt and Mesopotamia were enormously important. They influenced how people thought, how they behaved, and how they organized their societies. Myths shaped political authority, religious practice, art, and literature. While both civilizations developed rich mythological traditions, their myths were not the same, because the conditions in which they lived were not the same. As we will see, differences in geography, stability, and political organization led Egyptians and Mesopotamians to develop very different views of the gods, human life, and the meaning of existence.